With the second part, Tahir is going to introduce to us Cloud Composer. For those who are not familiar with Cloud Composer, it's the managed Airflow on the Google Cloud. So
Cool.
let's give a big applause to Tahir.
Awesome, thank you. Hi everyone, so my name is Tahir. I'm a big data specialist, customer engineer at Google Cloud. So I'm working with customers on different projects using Google Cloud. I'm kind of got involved with Airflow a few years ago and got to meet Foko about last year, I think, another Airflow meetup. So thank you for inviting me today. I kind of got involved with Airflow because I had some internal projects at Google. And surprisingly, we didn't actually have any tools to do kind of orchestration or scheduling of a lot of the Google Cloud products. So I was trying to build this Google Analytics sample data set. So we have this a real data set that we were using internally for testing and demos. And customers also want to use that, but we had to anonymize all of that data over like a year's worth of data. So I built that whole kind of process using Airflow, and that's kind of where I found that it's a really useful tool, and started kind of using it more and writing examples. The difficult thing with it was that it's obviously open source, so people had to kind of set up themselves, so we didn't get much adoption for it from our customers. As you know, Google's kind of good at creating open source projects, so we've got these open source projects that we turned into products. But luckily, about a year ago, instead of just creating open source projects and supporting those, Google decided to also start supporting external open source projects. So one of the first ones was Airflow. And then they turned that into a product called Google Cloud Composer, which for me was awesome because the reason customers weren't using it was because of the whole setup. And now they had an easy way to start using it. So what I'm going to talk about today is not Airflow or how to use Airflow, but more about the Google Cloud Composer product. So if you've got any questions along the way, please feel free to ask me. I'm more from the data side, and actually the setup of it is more kind of like a engineering task. So excuse me if I don't know everything in too much detail, but I'll try to answer as much as I can. So first, what is Cloud Composer? We kind of sell it as a fully managed a workflow orchestration service built on Airflow, so essentially managed Airflow. Some of the kind of key features that we've kind of built is able to kind of easily manage Airflow using various like, SDKs and APIs, being able to kind of have easy access, identity access to the web UI. So we have something called the identity-aware proxy, which essentially means that you can give a permission in the Google Cloud project, and then people can access the web UI, making it kind of very easy to give access and make that secure. We kind of have a streamlined way to kind of manage and configure the whole environment. We have built-in logging with our Stack Driver tool. We have various ways of doing identity access management, so loads of different rules and permissions that you can give on the environment. We've made it easy to kind of manage the DAGs by integrating it with cloud storage. So you just have to upload a DAG to cloud storage, and the DAG gets added to the worker. And a few other things. So one of the things at the bottom we just added was enterprise security using shared VPC, which I'll go in a bit later. So these are kind of the features that you get out of the box by using Cloud Composer. I don't know, how many people here actually work on kind of setting up Airflow? Okay, cool. So you probably kind of know about what needs to be done. So this is the architecture that engineers have gone with. So it was slightly different. So you might, if you've used this before in alpha or beta, it might have looked different, but this essentially what happens now. So when you create the environment, it spins up a Kubernetes engine cluster. If you're not familiar with Kubernetes, that's a kind of our container solution. It creates 3 nodes, one for the worker, one for Redis, one for the scheduler. And then in another project, it creates a Cloud SQL database for you and connects to that via a SQL proxy. It creates the web UI for you using App Engine. And then that's where I mentioned identity-aware proxy. So you have a simple way to connect to the web UI using a service that we released, I think, last year. And then it connects to cloud storage, so everything that you upload to Google Cloud Storage, so the DAGs, the plugins, they all get synchronized across everything for you. So after about 5 seconds, that DAG becomes available in the UI. And then it exports all of the logs into Stackdriver. So yeah, so when you set this up, this is all done for you. You don't need to manage any of this. I thought I'd quickly kind of show a demo of how that all works. So we have 3 ways that you can do it: via the SDK, so using command line, via the interface, or using our APIs. So I'll show you how that looks via the actual UI. So I presume, or maybe some people are familiar with the interface. So this is kind of all the products that you have. So Composer is now one of the products that we have in our UI. So you can click that, and then you can create an environment. And then here you can give that a name, how many nodes that you want. Normally 3 is okay. Getting into that conversation with customers now about like scaling up and what to do with it, depending on the kind of workload. So depending on that, you might put a different number there, where you want it to be located. So we support various regions and zones. And the machine types, so you can choose the actual machine types that you want. The disk size, so it defaults to 100 gigabytes. You can go down to a minimum of 20 gigabytes. If you're making use of various Google Cloud products, then the authorization scopes. I'll leave the network stuff for now. And then you have the Airflow configuration override. So this is what you'd have in the Airflow config file. You can override pretty much all of the things in the configuration file. There's a few things that we don't allow to be overridden. And the way you just do that is putting the kind of section in a key value pair. And then you can have environment variables, which the DAGs can use, and some labels. And then you just press create, and then it will go and create that for you. And that normally takes about 20 to 25 minutes. So after 25 minutes, you then have an environment. And what that does then is that you have a link to the web UI and a folder where you can upload all of your DAGs. Cool, so that's just a quick kind of demo of how you would actually set that up and how quick it is. And now let's go through some of the features of Cloud Composer in a bit more detail. So I showed you already, so uploading DAGs, you can upload them via command line. So we create a bucket for you, and you can just use a command line to upload the DAGs there. Or you can just go into the UI and drop the file there. I mentioned before, after about 5 seconds, that will start running. You can use any of the Airflow command line commands. We've kind of done it so that you do it via the gcloud, which is a Google SDK command line tool. And I kind of showed you here how you'd map it. So you take the Airflow command that you want to run, and you basically do the environment name, which I showed you when you set everything up. You say the command that you want to do, and this is where it becomes a bit different. You then do this kind of double dash, and then things are in a slightly different order. So I think I made a mistake in my text there. I didn't get the idea. We also are supporting the experimental API, so you can trigger DAGs from kind of events. So we've built an example showing how you could use Google Cloud Functions to trigger something. So for example, if a message comes into PubSub which is our global messaging service, or if you have a file dropping into Google Cloud Storage, that could trigger a cloud function, and within that cloud function, then you could then call the Airflow API to schedule the job. So I have one customer that's doing that where every day they run DAG, but then they might get old files that come in because data's been updated, and they just want that job to run again for that day. So they're using this to kind of trigger that for when new files land. And you can go to that link, and we've got the full code that you can start using. I am an access control, so access can be given at the project level. Got various permissions and roles. And I mentioned already the kind of aware proxy to access the web UI. These are the kind of things that you can do with the permissions. So it's quite nice that you can give someone kind of very low permission if you just want them to access the web UI, for example, all the way to people who can manage the environment, people that can add DAGs by just giving them permission to the folder, people who can see the logs, etc. So we've made sure that every different feature that's available also has kind of a permission tied to it, so you can give that granular control. Shared VPC, this is what I mentioned, kind of more for like enterprise requests. So with this, companies can have kind of a virtual private cloud so that they can start to manage the kind of billing access and better and without having kind of external IPs. So with this, you'll essentially have a shared VPC network that you assign. It kind of looks like this. So you'll have a host project, which is your kind of main project title organization. And then Cloud Composer will be set up in this service project on the right-hand side. What that means then is that you can start calling different services that you might have set up in Google Cloud without having to kind of go out into the public internet. So you might have projects with no external IPs that need to be called, and this kind of makes it very secure and easy to do. So it's a feature that's built into Kubernetes, or GKE, and now it's supported in Cloud Composer. So if you have customers asking about how to make things more secure, this is a great way to do it. Logs, so we put all of the logs into cloud storage, and then we also stream using the Fluentd logger into a Stackdriver, and then we've separated all of those out so you can easily see the different types of logs. So you can see the Airflow, scheduler, worker, etc., and see the kind of individual logs. You can then do things like create an export or create a metric on the different logs. These are all just features of Stackdriver. And every log, for example, has like a task ID or the workflow, the DAG ID. So if you can start to build kind of like real-time tools, or you can export this data into BigQuery if you want to do analysis over the actual logs. So that's kind of everything in terms of what Cloud Composer has. And I'm just going to go through some of the GCP operators. I'm not familiar. Is anyone using GCP on Airflow? Or? Cool. So you've probably seen a lot of them. So I didn't want to go too much into kind of using actual Airflow. So we support a lot of the GCP products, and that's mostly because of the open source community. I think Google are trying to kind of contribute back now. But for example, BigQuery was done by the community, which is pretty awesome. I think we created the Kubernetes operator. So this allows you to launch a Kubernetes pod within that same cluster. So you can essentially run run Docker in that same cluster. You can also run other pods in different GKE clusters using the GKE pod operator. And one of the recommendations was to kind of create these node pools so that you don't start using up the resource of kind of the Kubernetes cluster. So that's kind of one of the recommendations is a lot of customers want to just kind of run a lot of code in the kind of same environment or like within the DAG, and trying to find good ways to kind of separate that so you're not using the actual resource that Airflow needs. And then BigQuery operators. So this is kind of how I got started. So I really kind of like using them and like recommending them. So if you are looking to use GCP and want you to kind of try this out, we've got loads of good examples on using BigQuery. We've got loads of public data sets that you can use. That makes it kind of really easy to test out. I wrote a blog post that uses some of our public sample data sets. You can search for that and it should come up. And you can just run that on Cloud Composer and kind of see how it all works. In terms of kind of future plans, there's no support for Python 3 right now in Cloud Composer. I've been told that should come in the next month or so. So that should be really good. And I think hopefully at the same time support for 1.10. And then we've got more connectors for various GCP products. So trying to get things like Spanner and Bigtable all supported as well. And yeah, so if you've got any kind of feedback or ideas, please kind of get in touch with me and send them to me. I speak to the product managers quite a lot. They're kind of happy to kind of get feedback from Europe because they're mostly just hearing what people want in America. So yeah, definitely get in touch. Yeah, and you can get started at these links. Yeah. Any questions?
So first, let us thank us Tahir.
Thank you. Cheers. Yeah.
Question over here.
Do you know about common workflow language?
Common workflow? No. No.
No, okay. So I'm working in science.
Yeah.
Massive DAGs also. We have this thing called common workflow language, and we use it a lot now. It's like this domain-specific language.
Okay. Yeah.
And, yeah, I don't know. I think it would be interesting. There's a blog post with somebody who's now working at Google who made a prototype as an integration, but it never.
Okay. Well, integration into Airflow?
Into Beam and Airflow.
Okay. Interesting. No.
So I thought maybe like there's some new things happening there now.
Yeah, no, Fred. Have you seen anything about that? No.
Well, I
Fred,
know
no.
a lot of companies who like generate their DAGs, so they have like some kind of a YAML structure or whatever, and
okay,
then
yeah.
they generate it using Python their DAGs on top of that. But that's new to me. But
Yeah, this is an effort for because there's hundreds of these frameworks. So this is an effort to standardize this, and it's also YAML based.
Okay.
It's all
Okay, yeah.
an OC certified open standard.
look into it. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. How are Google positioning Composer? Because from what I gather, there are multiple use cases. So I think most of us here are in the, let's say, data, big data analytics domain.
Yeah.
But I can also imagine Composer being used in the, let's say, container orchestration domain, like as a way to organize, as a way to have an organizer on top of Kubernetes itself.
I see. Yeah. I think the kind of main focus is the kind of data and analytics side. So it's under the data analytics team. The focus is on that side. Yeah, like in terms of other things might happen as well, just kind of consequences of that with all the kind of Kubernetes integrations. But I'm not too familiar in terms of like why it would be used with that. So yeah, but I do know the kind of, yeah, I don't know if you know more about the kind of contributions that Google's making in terms of the Kubernetes side.
I can see it in general, like for example, if you get new data, then you want to train your model again based on this new data. But this also counts, like for example, if you get new code. So if you get a new version of your code, you also can, like recently with this cloud function, I didn't know that it exists, but then you can also trigger like a new build on your Airflow machine and create, for example, a new model when you get a new version of your code.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask about pricing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So basically the pricing is based on the resources. So essentially everything that's been spun up, you'll be charged for that. So as if you were kind of setting up all yourself. That's the pricing model for now. I know there's plans to kind of change that, because the problem now is that if you're just running a few DAGs, you've still got everything running the whole day, the whole month, so it can get expensive. So for my test, it has been like a few $100s just to kind of keep it running. So if you are just doing it for like 1 or 2 DAGs, it might be expensive. I think the plan is to go more and more kind of to the managed workspace, where you don't have your own cluster and you don't have your own database, and then that's when the pricing will probably come down.
Okay, yeah, because I calculated the pricing. I looked at Cloud Composer a few times, but I got numbers like €300 or something for running like the basics with just a few workers.
Yeah.
Not even the resources, because that's just the time to run the database and run Airflow, right? So the cost of Kubernetes itself actually adds to that.
So there is no cost for Kubernetes. That will just be the cluster. So you just get charged for the VMs that have been spun up. So for actual using and consuming Kubernetes engine, there is no fee.
Okay, so there's no extra fee for the compute resources.
Yeah, so as in when you spin up that cluster, you'll have that compute resource. Right now, it doesn't scale up or down, so it's just a constant. So that will be the fixed cost.
I can add to that. We have it running as well. We spend also €300 a month just to keep it running.
Yeah.
And basically, it runs once a night, something.
Yeah.
And then the additional cost is barely nothing. So keeping it like idle is
the more expensive. Yeah.
For what we do as well.
Yeah. No, that's good feedback. Yeah.
Mind that much, but normally I would like 300.
Yeah.
So a small instance would be awesome.
Yeah. Did you try to set it up with a smaller instance? Because remember I showed you can use machine type.
Minimum fee and minimum standard.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's gonna be 300. Yeah. True. Yeah.
Micro instances, for example, maybe then.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I think that's the kind of unfortunate part of it now, is that just to have it set up in that way from the architecture diagram I showed, it's just the kind of cost of having all of those components.
Getting started with it, in the beginning it's way too expensive to spend this money on it, but we do a lot on it and it will grow bigger, and then it's not a problem that the cost then at some point. But to get started with it, it's hard to justify the cost
Yeah.
in the beginning, so lower prices for smaller amounts of DAGs would be awesome to do.
Yeah. Now, if you can get in touch and let me know, and especially if you're using it for customer, that's kind of feedback. Now it's gone in as public. We need that feedback to kind of so that the PMs will do it. But that is kind of been one of the sticking points for getting people started as well. So, yeah. Thank you. So, yeah, Julian, go.
Yeah, one more to add. You mentioned the cloud functions, experimental, triggering DAGs.
Yeah.
When will it be ready for live?
I mean, so it's the Airflow API. I think is not actually it's classed as experimental. Do you know the status of the actual API?
I think you can use the G-Cloud to just trigger a DAG. So in that case, if it's just supported by the Google Cloud API, you can in your Cloud Function you can just trigger this.
So it's in Airflow. It's still, if you go to Airflow docs, it still says API experimental, but we officially support it in Cloud Composer. Yeah. Yeah, so you can, how I showed with the bucket that it creates, you can upload your custom operators as well. So and any plugins, yeah. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So you can upload the plugins as well. And any kind of Python packages and everything as well. Yeah.
It's interesting that, we don't want to have this handover anymore between one person and another, but then you still have to upload a DAG, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so right now, no, there's you'd have to kind of design that yourself or write the code yourself that would actually push it to GCS. I think there's been like ideas around Git support, but I'm not sure where that exactly is. But yeah.
You could, for example, easily use cloud build from the Google Cloud just to trigger like a cloud build and then push it to the storage, and then it will automatically be picked up by Airflow. It's quite easy, actually.
Nice.
So I work for a shop where we use Amazon for all of our cloud resources.
Yeah.
So say I don't want to manage my Airflow cluster anymore, I want to buy it from Google.
Yeah.
Would you expect me then to pull the data in? How would that work in practice? Or
No, so I mean, one of the ways of kind of selling Composer is as kind of multi-cloud. So it's essentially just like running Airflow anywhere. You're not locked into then just using GCP products. You can still use all of the Amazon operators. So yeah, is there any? Do you have any kind of issues with that? I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I think it can be difficult. For example, if you are using Amazon specific stuff and you don't have libraries on your Google Cloud machine because they're Amazon proprietary, you cannot just pull them from a repository. So that's something that I can think of. But it should be possible, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have been using Airflow.
Yeah.
Directly from the Airbnb. We haven't utilized the GCP for that. But one of the issues that we faced was that whenever we used to run our jobs, once in a blue moon or while, our jobs got stuck in a running status. I mean, we had to kill it manually. I mean, we have to change the status manually.
Yeah.
Are these kind of issues solved in Google Cloud, or you work on these fixes?
Yeah, I know we released something when we just went into GA, and I'm not sure it's the same problem. If you look at our release notes, there was something around that about things being frozen. I remember I experienced that as well, where things would be frozen. I think, from what I was reading, we've started to use the stack driver logging and monitoring to kind of help with that, to kind of restart the node, I think, or restart the pod. So yeah.
If we restart it, then it goes fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I know in beta I had a problem that kept happening over and over again, and then when GA got released, I tested it, and that problem went away because of that apparent fix. So I say have a look at our release notes. That should give more details on that. I think that issue that we resolved. So yeah.
I have another generic question. For example, now you have integrated an open source tool to Google Cloud. So for example, if there are some bugs in an open source tool, so does Google fix it on its own, or does it wait for the open source tool to get fixed and then it imports it? How does the cycle flow?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I think that's the reason we're kind of slightly behind as well. That's why we're still on 1.9. I think if for example, it's an actual issue with the Airflow instance running, then we'll fix it. If, for example, a operator has a field that has not been designed correctly, then that would probably have to kind of wait until the next release, and then you would just have to upload the operator yourself as a plugin. So yeah, so anything wrong with actual Composer, you have support. So you have Google Cloud support. You can submit a ticket, and they'll look into it. So yeah. So yeah.
Cool. So I think that's it. So let's thank Thank once more.
Good.
So I think that concludes the second Airflow meeting. Thank you for all for being here and for the nice questions and the nice evening.